If you ever find yourself thinking Magic the Gathering has too many booster styles and it's very confusing, well, I've got some news for you. Set boosters and draft boosters are a thing of the past, and a new booster will replace them, hopefully simplifying things, but also coming with a cost. Let's get into the video. Alright everybody, thanks so much for being here, and thanks for checking out the video as always. We're going to talk today very much about the Magic the Gathering change that is coming up with boosters, and if you missed it in the intro, draft boosters and set boosters are going away. If you're unfamiliar with what the differences are, maybe you came back to Magic after a long hiatus, draft boosters are essentially what Magic booster packs have always been, your standard 15-card booster pack designed for drafting, typically with a rare and with a chance of a foil, as well as a basic land, but they're pretty standard overall. The set booster was introduced a couple of years back. I believe the first one came out with Zendikar Rising, although I could be wrong on that, but I know that was definitely one of the ones early on, and set boosters had the promise of potentially extra rares, list cards, and art cards, as well as other random inclusions from time to time, like Mythical Archives, and even the more recent, like Brothers War Retro Frame Artifacts. You had the opportunity to pull more of those because there were more slots in set boosters, but of course, set boosters came with less cards, and set boosters cost more money. It was announced today that they are going to be getting rid of both of these and combining them into one titled Play Boosters. Now, what is a Play Booster? If you see by this helpful graphic on the screen here, the way these are going to work is it's going to have a total of 15 slots, one of which will be either an ad, a token, or an art card, meaning they are keeping the art cards that would be in the set boosters, but they're not going to be guaranteed. Now, there will be 1 to 6 commons in the pack, and then a 7th common that can, on very small occasions, I believe it's 12.5% of the time, be replaced with a card from the list. Meaning that, you know, there will be list inclusions in these sets going forward, which is certainly nice because I do think the list, when used right, has things going for it. Of course, we know that Mana Crypt will be getting a reprint as a special guest, which will appear in the list slot. So it'll be nice to see that that's going to be, you know, something you can get out of any boosters, albeit with a very low pull rate. Slots 8, 10 will be uncommons, and then the 11th slot will be a rare or mythic rare, with the 12th slot being a basic land. Now here's where it gets a little interesting. Draft boosters will now have a guaranteed foil card. There will be a foil wild card, and then there will be a non-foil wild card. What that means is you have 2 slots in the pack that can literally be anything. You could, in theory, end up with a pack that has 4 rares, because if you get a rare list hit, and then you get a regular rare, and then you get the wild cards as rares, mythics, what have you, there is still the chance of hitting higher amounts of rares, while also, you know, being designed to an extent anyway for a draft format. One of the biggest complaints about the list that people have had is that it's massive. So it's basically just a giant reprint block that they mix into sets to give you the chance to pull some other exciting stuff from Magic history. And the way that the typical list stuff works is that it's not usually super great. Like, there's a couple big hitter reprints that have appeared on the list, but there's also a lot of fluff, maybe older cards, commons, uncommons that just don't have a lot of value. So chasing the list or opening packs with the hope of hitting list stuff was definitely never the best idea. But they did do this right in one set, which was Streets of New Capenna, where they made the list very small, and they made it so that, you know, if you did hit a list card, there was a chance of it being something a lot better. I think New Capenna did it great, and then for whatever reason after that, they just kind of went back to the regular way that the list was structured. But it looks like now going forward, the way it's going to work is that it's going to be about 40 reprints in addition to the special guests. So there'll be 30 or so common or uncommon and 10 rare or mythic rare in the list. And then there will be the special guests. We don't really know how many special guests there are going to be, and they are going to change set to set. Obviously, we do know that Mana Crypt is, you know, going to be included as the first special guest, like I said. But basically what it means is the list is going to be much smaller. So hopefully that means they'll curate a better list that's maybe like thematically related to the set, or has some better reprints to kind of give people more interest going forward. But cutting it down from about 300 to 40 is certainly a good step in the right direction. So if they are going to keep the list around, I'm glad they're at least making it a bit more accessible and reasonable to hit. Now, I don't know the exact ratios before, but it looks like the rare mythic rare slot's going to be 6 packs. I don't know the exact details, but it looks like rares are going to be in 6 out of 7 packs, and mythic rares are going to be 1 in 7. Now, I don't know what, I think mythics were probably somewhere around that ratio before, but essentially if there's 36 packs in a box, that means you're looking at around 5 mythics per box, not counting what your wild cards might be. So it, it'll be interesting to see where they go. I do like the fact that, there's going to be that sort of wild card aspect, but I think if you're someone who drafts a lot, some of the concern is that, like, some people may just draft absolutely busted, and they may end up just having really powerful cards. I don't know how exactly they're going to address that, to be totally honest with you, but I'm not a huge draft guy. It's fun, but it's not something that I really kind of focus on, so yeah, that's just kind of what it is. All right, so the article does outline some of the differences from the set booster. So it looks like there's going to be 2 more playable cards in it. Set boosters had 12 cards. These are going to have 14 playable cards. There will be no connected commons or uncommons, meaning there's not going to be like just a bunch of green or a bunch of cards that are, white, whatever. It'll be just kind of like a randomized, sort of draft-oriented format. There'll be 1 less non-foil wildcard slot. So set boosters had 2 non-foil wildcard slots and 1 traditional foil. And there'll be 1 less non-playable object. So obviously in a set booster, you could get a token and an art card. Now they're in the same slot. And of course, less chances of an art card now because they're 1 in 3 versus being guaranteed in a set booster before. Before draft boosters, the difference is you now have the potential to open up to 4 rare or mythic rares, but you do get 1 less playable card, so there are 14 instead of 15 now. There's 3 less commons, and then you have the addition of the wild cards, which I think is actually going to be good, as well as a 1 in 8 list opportunity. So basically that means you're going to be getting about 4 list cards per box, which is okay, because like I said, you're not really, expecting that to be too much. There were a lot of questions that they asked, and I definitely recommend checking the article out because some of the bigger concerns people had were mentioned, but some of the reasons that they've kind of explained is, set boosters eclipsed draft boosters, and I kind of do agree with this. Generally speaking, unless you were doing a draft, set boosters were typically the better value buy, just because it was like $1 more, but you had much greater odds of getting actual good hits. They also mentioned inventory problems, especially for LGSs and stuff, having all of this product, having more boxes and, distributor issues. So instead of LGSs having to manage selling draft and set booster boxes and having a lot of dead stock, they just get one, play booster box or what have you, which I do kind of agree with. And obviously the draft boosters as a whole, like, we're not seeing anywhere near as much because stores were just opting to buy more set boosters and draft boosters, and so it was kind of impacting the drafting as a whole. And then they also cite, causing confusion in the marketplace. I actually have some friends who have been like, I can't keep track of these things. What are the differences? Like, if you follow it and cover it like I do, it might make more sense to you over time. But it is just kind of like, it is just kind of like one of those things where I think it can be a little confusing. And narrowing it down to just regular boosters and collector boosters, I think is fine. And they also said, people buying boosters weren't having the opportunity to get all the cool stuff because obviously some people are opening sets and then some people are opening draft, and draft people are missing out on cool stuff. Set players are missing out on drafting. I do think the idea of combining them actually kind of works. And of course, there are different ratios, rarities, and stuff that they talk about and how they wanted to be able to keep the likelihood at anywhere between 1 to 4 rares and or mythics, and that's kind of why players like set boosters, because of course if you open a new booster and you pull 4 rares, it's certainly better than opening a draft booster, pulling a garbage rare and a bunch of commons and uncommons you can't do anything with. So it makes sense. I actually kind of like this move a lot, but what I dislike about it is, of course, there is obviously going to be a price increase because things will be remaining at the price of a set booster instead of being, the price of a draft booster. So the actual quote-unquote MSRP of a set booster, I believe, is supposed to be $5.99. My locals typically sells them around $4.50, but then some of my other locals sell them at like $7. So I guess it really depends on like what people are paying per boxes and whether or not they're getting them at certain levels. But I would think these are going to end up being $6 a pack at the store based on the way they explained it. But there'll be 36 packs per box. The box will be the same price as a set booster box. They are increasing the number that you get in there, and I think overall it does have potential to be a more exciting product to open, but it definitely does, is going to be a bit of a change for people that have been playing this way for, the past couple of years and are not really sure how to get, acclimated back to, what was basically pre-pandemic Magic at this point, in terms of the changes. So basically they have kind of rectified a big mistake, and I don't think people are going to love the price increase, but really if people were buying set boosters more anyway, and they're just going to still be buying them, your price difference isn't going to be that big. And I think the changes do kind of outweigh the negatives, but of course there are negatives and it does impact people in some ways. So I throw it to you guys. What do you think of these changes? Do you think the play booster is an exciting concept? Are you happy that we're getting back to a more simplified version of collecting Magic? Or are you maybe a draft player who's a little bit bummed out about this? You're worried about how it's going to impact your drafting? Let me know in the comments down below what you think, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.